When it comes to shows that never get old for me, no matter how many times I rewatch them, Gravity Falls is at the top of that list. I truly have no idea how many times I've watched every single episode. When the series was still running in season 2, I had every episode up to its current point on my computer, and I would just sit there on my laptop senior year of high school, ignoring all of my responsibilities to watch Gravity Falls over and over. It was actually the very first show I was truly speculating and theorizing about online. Back in Tumblr's heyday, I had my own blog where I would just post theory after theory after theory, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Whenever we received a new episode, every frame felt like a personal gift from the show's team to us as a viewer. Yet, despite this praise, I'm not gonna lie, whenever I do embark on a rewatch of Gravity Falls, especially when I'm showing someone this series for the first time, while I'm always eager to get them to season 2, up to the episode Not What He Seems, the journey we find in the show itself is well paced, it keeps you engaged, and it's constantly building out this world. And then Ford is introduced. Now, don't get me wrong, Ford Pines is my favorite character in Gravity Falls, the author of the journals. Oh, the mystique and wonder that accompanies his presence. The secrets that are held within his grasp. Of course, I need to know more. Unfortunately, we don't get much of that. It feels like after Not What He Seems, or more so A Tale of Two Stands, the pacing of the show and its storytelling suddenly accelerates. The show itself sprinting to the finish line that is Weird McGucket. Truthfully, Gravity Falls never reached its full potential because with the reveal of the author, we never got the atmosphere that should accompany that. Even in smaller aspects such as family drama, sure, it was there, but it had less to do with the arrival of Ford and how that changes the family dynamic, and more so with just Dipper and Mabel as characters. Sure, the climax of Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future did revolve around Dipper potentially staying in Gravity Falls, taking up a partnership with Ford, but the Ford part didn't really matter. Not saying that it needed to, but for the guy who wants to be the hero, has a bit of a complex, and complicated feelings towards his twin brother, there were a few unexplored angles with Ford that more or less had to be fit into the storytelling of Journal 3. And when it comes to really honing in on the supernatural aspects of Gravity Falls, and how all of that changes with the arrival of Ford, that as well serves as an element that did not reach its full potential. It was not a fully realized concept in the show. And this goes beyond Ford. I feel like a lot was missing from season 2B of Gravity Falls. So today, I want to touch on the things we should have seen. The Gravity Falls that was absent from its final episodes leading into Weird McGucket. And I actually want to start at the reason why we really didn't get any of this. The real story behind why Gravity Falls concluded after 2 seasons. Because the true story is a little bit more complicated than the answer that we readily accept that was initially given when the show was announced to wrap up back in November of 2015, where Hirsch said that he just wanted a real mystery with a real climax and ending, having Gravity Falls serve as a finite story, something that didn't go on for too long and having people wonder, is it past its prime? So what's the real story? Well, let's jump to an interview from Oh My Disney that dates February 15th, 2016, the day the series finale of Gravity Falls premiered. The following reads, we asked Hirsch last week when he firmly decided that season 2 was going to be the end of the series, which has been praised by critics and adored by fans. He answered that a definite end date had always been a part of the plan. I knew from when I first pitched the show that it had a beginning, middle, and end. When I said that, it would be 2 or 3 seasons, but I didn't know how long a season was. I had also never made a TV show before, or even written a script before, so it was always finite, but the exact contours of it are something that I needed to feel out. And to be frank, season 1 was very difficult. Keep in mind that, as Hirsch says, this was the first time I have ever run a show, and that was incredibly draining. Gravity Falls is an animated show unlike any other, with an unprecedented level of detail, world building, mythology, and most importantly, heart. And it's not something that Hirsch took lightly. Before he had even finished the first season, he was ready to close up shop. It had so many demands that by the time I was 2/3 of the way through season 1, I had already made up my mind. I'm not making anything more after this. Season 1 is the only season, even though I'm ending on a cliffhanger. Originally, it was, I'll make 2 or 3 seasons. Then it was, I'm not making anything else, I was wiped out, this is so difficult, and I didn't think anyone would watch. He then added, I was very, very dead set on not making any more because I was so burnt out. But as it turns out, people did watch it. A lot of people, in fact. And they didn't just like the show, they loved it. Fans loved picking apart the minutia of the inside jokes, self-referential callbacks, and elliptical hints of future events. And critics were just as excited, with weekly recaps being conducted by major outlets and the New York Times describing the series as quirky and endearing. And as Hirsch tells it, the response did help ease the pain. When the show came out and was so well received, it was incredibly gratifying. They say that when a woman gives birth, there's this flood of endorphins afterwards, which is the body trying to trick you into thinking that wasn't painful, so you might do it again one day. That started to happen with the fan response. Still, he kept in mind how hard the first season was. I didn't stop thinking about what I had promised myself during late nights, after sleeping in my office for 3 nights in a row. You can't do this to yourself anymore. Ultimately, 2 people convinced him to come back and do another season. Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show and eventual Gravity Falls guest star, who told Hirsch that his kids loved the show, and Pat McHale, who created the similarly genius animated series Over the Garden Wall. McHale had been watching the series, which meant a lot to Hirsch, and then told him, look, after that cliffhanger, you've got to finish it. Hirsch decided that he had about 10 more episodes left in him. Then he went to the network who said, we only take seasons in 20s. So I said, okay, 1 more season, Hirsch told us. Before we started the season, it said in my contract, before I put pen to paper, that this is my last season. The studio agreed, under one condition. Hirsch couldn't tell anybody. Not that Hirsch particularly minded. To their credit, they'd hope I changed my mind. I don't think they actually believed me. I think they thought I was being cranky after a lot of hard work. But the decision to make a second season was the decision to end the series. Keeping that a secret, though, was hard. I kept saying, can I tell people now? Can I tell people now? Because I knew the longer I waited, the more people would be upset. They kept saying, let's keep thinking on it. Finally, they realized that I was serious. While it's understandable that Hirsch kept the announcement contained, it seems that not even those working on the show knew exactly what was happening. We chatted with Jason Ritter, who voices Dipper, about how he found out it was ending. When Hirsch told him that the show was coming to a close, Ritter said that the creator dodged his question. He parts it out a little bit. He told me there was a possibility, but he wasn't sure. He sort of told me in little bits, I guess. I wasn't really sure. And then when I read the finale, I thought, this feels like not just the season finale, it feels like a series finale. That's right. The star of the show didn't know the series was ending until he read the finale script. Still, Ritter says it was partially his fault. He wanted his feeling that the show would be coming to an end to be untrue. I think I was in a certain amount of denial because at a certain point, that is what it was, and Alex wasn't going to do anymore. I just didn't know. I wasn't 100% sure. I just didn't know if he would be magically convinced sometime after the decision had been made. But then, after I read the finale, I was like, this would be hard to continue. This type of secrecy, which has been a long-standing part of the Gravity Falls world, took its toll on Hirsch. I'd be at a convention, and an adorable 6-year-old girl would come up to me and say, I hope this show lasts forever. And I'd want to tell her that this is only 2 seasons long, but I couldn't tell her. And after telling us the story, he said, that is the absolute, true, never-before-told, accurate, full version. And now I'm spreading it out there for the internet to take in. Because, for some reason, no big channels even today who cover Gravity Falls have not mentioned this untold story. Although it hasn't been untold, a lot of fans have been aware of this for 4 years. So hopefully even more people are made well aware. But all that said, in a separate interview, Hirsch did reference that season 2 would initially end at not what he seems. That's right, they were going to play an even longer con with Ford, not just the season 2 mid-finale, but the end of season 2. And while I'm so glad they didn't go with that Ford came out of the portal at the mid-season mark, I gotta say, because of that, it sure does sound like that all of what would have been season 3 was just relegated to season 2B. And because Weirdmageddon spanned 3 episodes, alongside Not What He Seems being season 2, episode 11, we were only given 6 episodes of a Gravity Falls where we are acquaintances with the author of the journals. A Tale of Two Stands, a very well done flashback episode that gives us exposition. Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons, Dipper and Ford bonding over D&D. The Stanchurian Candidate, a Stan episode where Ford does play a role in the story, but he's still very much relegated to the sidelines, which is not only a little bit disappointing on rewatches, but I remember around the time of this episode premiering, a popular theory flying around was that Ford would compete with Stan for town mayor. Although a lot of fans also threw out the obvious fact that Ford doesn't really want to be seen in public that often. He's just kind of keeping things low-key in his basement. But still, that would have been great, and it would have been a great way to show how Stan and Ford clash. We have The Last Mabelcorn, which, although it does give us more information on Ford, his relation to Bill Cipher, and Bill's overarching plan, it somehow was the episode's subplot. Like, look at this opening scene. Bill paying a visit to Ford, which we broke down an alternate version of in our deleted scenes episode. Give it a click. I see a week after we made ours, Screen Rant did their own, and more people clicked on that. Hi, Screen Rant. Please stop stealing our Gravity Falls content. Shade aside, it made absolutely no sense as to why this would be the B-plot. Granted, The Last Mabelcorn was written in a week, but come on. When it's between learning about the author of the journal's relationship with Bill Cipher and Mabel and the girls on a quest to fight unicorns, which one do you think I'm gonna want to see more? Then we have Roadside Attraction, which Ford doesn't even appear in. He's not even mentioned. I know Roadside Attraction is one of the more divisive episodes, and yeah, it does feel kind of early season 1-ish, but honestly, I do believe the jokes in the episode are strong enough to give it a pass, even if Dipper's a dickhead in it for no reason. And then we have Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future, which is a fantastic Ford episode. I know I sort of complained at the start about how Dipper and Mabel's conflict was about Dipper and Mabel, not really Ford, or really prompted by Ford. He just offered Dipper an apprenticeship, but I still really enjoy Ford in this episode. However, when you lay it out on the table, what are these episodes really doing aside from setting up Weird McGucket? Sure, they flesh out Dipper, Mabel, and Stan more. Sure, we get to see Gideon again, but it feels like it didn't explore how Gravity Falls as a town changes with the presence of Ford. He barely interacts with most of the main cast. He's in his basement most of the time trying to stop Bill, and then when Weird McGucket hits, he's ready to be out of commission for most of it, and that really blows because it was the closest we would have gotten to see Ford in action that's equal to his escapades in the Nightmare Realm. If Gravity Falls had more time, if they did just have 5 or 10 more episodes, the first additional story element I would want to focus on is Ford's time in the Nightmare Realm. This man spent 30 years exploring different dimensions and fighting different adversaries. Now, yes, it is touched on in Journal 3, and I do want to discuss those contents at a later time. But to never have it addressed in the show, it's straight up robbing the audience, keeping such a huge and significant chunk of the character's past secret and never touching on it. Yeah, Journal 3 gives us insight, but honestly, it still didn't beat seeing any of this animated. All of Season 3 being fit into the second half of Season 2, why did that have to result in this ending up on the cutting room floor? And the show itself naturally has the perfect setup to explore this. The Mystery Shack in itself. Something detailed in Journal 3 is Ford's disdain for the Mystery Shack. That Stan's makeshift creatures are disrespectful to Ford's research, the supernatural beings that he's dedicated his life to. If this made it into the actual show, Ford criticizing Stan's creations, you know what would have happened? Stan would be all like, well, I'd like to see what you could do. And Dipper and Mabel would be all like, whoa, yeah, wait, great Uncle Ford. Stan may not be able to get any of these monsters right for his life, but you've been in between dimensions for 3 decades. Why not give the shack some historical accuracy and make some attractions based off the actual monsters you encountered in the Nightmare Realm? Stan wouldn't just be profiting, you would be educating the tourist. And you see, that would be a pitch Ford would love to hear. Probably would be a little bit miffed that his brother would still be making a profit on it, but I think Dipper's point of, oh, this would actually be educating others, would push Ford to actually indulging in this. Erecting depictions of the adversaries he faced in the Nightmare Realm, accompanied with actual flashbacks of Ford's time. We can even throw in a surprise villain. Maybe the shapeshifter manages to return, transforming to all these beings that Ford encountered, their likeliness becoming props at the Mystery Shack. Speaking of Stan and Ford, what the hell? Remember at the end of A Tale of Two Stans, where Ford says, but by the end of the summer, I want my house back, I want my name back, and this Mystery Shack junk is over forever. You guys like how that, never came up again? Okay, I actually don't understand why on any level this was excluded from being followed up on. The fact that Stan finds Dipper and Mabel's great uncle that they spent the entire summer with is, gonna be homeless and lose his job because of his brother. They never really had the twins find out about this or talk about this if they already knew. I think the drama in Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future would have increased tenfold if Dipper and Mabel found out that at the end of summer, Ford is kicking out Stan, and they're both at odds with their own personal opinions. Maybe Dipper will see Ford's side, while Mabel would be unable to comprehend how brothers could even do each other like this. Still, how could siblings, twins, do this to one another? And that tension would add on to Dipper wanting to stay in Gravity Falls with Ford. Next up is McGucket, who seemed to be poised to play a bigger role in season 2 and give more appropriate closure to Ford, closure that is provided in Journal 3. Alas, after Not What He Seems, in which he has a super brief cameo, he vanishes until Weird Mageddon 3. Why did you do this? I actually don't understand. Especially because McGucket's role in Not What He Seems sets up an entire episode that just doesn't happen. You see, with the portal about to activate, McGucket gets out of town, taking his raccoon wife, and we have no idea where he goes, until the 4-month hiatus that followed Not What He Seems.
Philip runs away from Gravity Falls because stuff is happening. So I was just wondering if where he went, if he'll ever come back with his raccoon wife.
Got it. So the question is, in the events of Not What He Seems, McGucket says something to the effect of, "It's going down, I gotta get out of town! Come here, raccoon wife!" And he runs off. We haven't seen him since, or have we? I will say that he's a guy who's known for a very, very long time the potential dangers of the scientific projects that Stanford Pines has been building and working on. He was so concerned about what might happen that he voluntarily erased his own memories for a spell to try to forget. Now that his memories are coming back, he knows just how weird things are going to get, and he has been hiding in the town in a particular place, a really good place to hide, a place maybe built to deal with an end time type situation. He'll leave this place from time to time to get snacks and maybe check out a local town event, but he's currently hanging out somewhere in town where you might survive an end time scenario, but that is all I can say. Unfortunately, we are all out of time.
And this somewhat became canon, as Disney XD had a marathon block for Gravity Falls, Old Man McGucket's Conspiracy Corner, which may or may not have taken place in the bunker. I don't think it did. But hey, it's a big bunker, I could be wrong, so let me just throw that out there. But also later in a set of shorts around the time Weird Mageddon 1 was about to premiere, Apocalypse Prep It. These shorts existed between episodes to promote both Weird Mageddon 1 and Weird Mageddon 2, which featured McGucket in the bunker, speculating and preparing for the end. It seems to me they could have easily had a tale where Ford needed to return to the bunker for one reason or another. He has to recover some sort of material to fight against Bill in the apocalypse or something along those lines. It's hard not to make Ford cool, so I'm sure they could have done a great job with that. But once they get to the bunker, we get to the real meat and potatoes of the episode. Ford and McGucket's reconciliation. This would have been a great way to convey the selfish side of Ford that we rarely get to see. It's absolutely a part of his personality. It's elaborated on in Journal 3. It adds weight to Stanley's sacrifice. But you can only get so much out of what's presented in the canon show material. A huge reason is because, again, Ford has a presence, but he's not playing a super active role in the story leading up to Weird Mageddon. He's just active enough where he can have a few minutes of screen time that advances the story. But you get the idea. Let's move on to Gideon. Gideon was wasted in season 2. He's only really there in the Centurion candidate because it's his last hurrah, the last episode where he's the main villain, and they needed to set up his role in Weird Mageddon. But this completely negates the fact that Ford Pines, the author of the journals, Gideon's sole motivation in the first season is present and accounted for in Gravity Falls, and we don't get to see a lick of Gideon's reaction. The only time we could have would have been in Weird Mageddon 3, but they had to pay off the Zodiac, so, there really was no time, and I understand that. But Gideon always referred to Stan Lee as Stanford for obvious reasons, and he's a pawn of Bill Cipher. For all the aforementioned reasons, Gideon maybe, just maybe, should have had a little bit more screen time. What if we had one more episode after Centurion candidate, where maybe Tyler Q-Biker, who is now mayor at this point, gets manipulated into excusing Gideon from jail, or maybe Gideon just gets off on probation, something along those lines. And Gideon wastes absolutely no time coming after the Pines family. Following up with the Centurion candidate's cliffhanger, why not have Bill possess Gideon in this episode? Gideon! Having one episode before he gets to witness the horrors of someone else being controlled by Bill, Gideon learning the true identity of the author, that the author of the journals is a part of the family he hates the most, it would have brought the entire series full circle, season 1 feeling even more interlinked with season 2. However, above all else, I really wish we just would have had more casual Gravity Falls adventures with Ford by Dipper and Mabel's side. Think about it, does it really make sense for Ford to just keep himself locked up in the basement all day? This is a man who studied Gravity Falls for years. We know it was about 6 before encountering Bill Cipher, but what about after that? Could this man have spent nearly a decade studying this town? If he's away from everything for 30 years, when he returns, he would want to explore more of the town and see how much has changed. I feel as if the run-of-the-mill adventures of Gravity Falls only really scratched the surface of conspiracy theory territory, and Dipper was guided by the journals. But now the journals personified lives in his house. The show should have naturally pivoted to the craziest, deepest adventures they've ever embarked on. What about the Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel? Something whose banner appears in nearly every single episode of the entire series, yet we never got to learn more about. Now, this is one of those mysteries we can do without. It's up to speculation, but I feel as if that was a result of the show only running for 2 seasons. And that if they had more time, we definitely would have dug into it. A secret society in Gravity Falls. Do they use their powers for good, evil, or somewhere in between? I imagine, because of the lack of a reference in Journal 3, Ford may have never really dug much into the Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel. Or if he did, it was in a separate journal. But the idea of him returning to a brand new organization, running amok underneath his nose, that would have made a fantastic episode. Ford, Dipper, and Mabel embarking on a quest, but then stands a part of the Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel. And then that could complicate things for the 3rd act. Or how about actual aliens? Alex Hirsch said that aliens would be the last things they ever touched on in the series, and they did touch on it with Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future, so he wasn't really lying, but damn, I wanted to see aliens in Gravity Falls, like, straight up. Yeah, demons are cool, but Dipper and Mabel deserve to go into space. The most we got was still pretty cool, but, what could have been? Maybe someday if the show ever gets a proper continuation or one-off special. But as always, these are just my long-winded thoughts, and I want to hear yours. What do you think? What did you want to see explored in Gravity Falls? Do you feel as if the show needed more episodes? Maybe even another season? I feel as if I said this in the past, maybe not on a video, but an entire season's worth of Weird-Mageddon, or at least 10 episodes worth of Weird-Mageddon, would have been amazing to see. But I am glad that it is only, 3-4 episodes. The length of a TV movie. It's nice to have. But as always, drop your thoughts in the comments below or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at OffShockVlogs. We're also on Instagram. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. OffShockVlogs, signing out.